Have you ever wondered why your nan always covered everything expensive with crochet, or why margarine tubs seem to have a second life in her kitchen? These practices, odd as they may seem today, were born out of necessity in post-war Britain. Rationing, social pressures, and a culture of frugality shaped the everyday rituals that defined British life for decades. Let's take a step back in time and explore some of these fascinating habits that made perfect sense in an era of scarcity. The post-war period in Britain was marked by economic hardship and social expectations that were often felt in the most personal spaces of people's lives, their homes. In a time where washing machines were still considered a luxury, people found clever ways to navigate domestic challenges, often transforming what might seem like eccentric habits into essential survival techniques. Take, for example, the seemingly bizarre tradition of decorating television sets with crocheted doilies. In the 1950s and 60s, televisions were a rare and precious commodity, often costing several months' wages. Households that had one treated it with the same reverence as fine furniture. The doily, which adorned the tops of these electronic marvels, served dual purposes. It protected the polished wood veneer from dust and scratches and displayed the homemaker's skill in crochet. The doily also became a subtle sign of social status, signifying a blend of modernity with respectability. As televisions evolved into more utilitarian objects, the doily eventually disappeared from the scene. But the practice speaks to an era when appearances mattered deeply. Handkerchiefs, too, were more than just a tool for hygiene. They were symbols of class and respectability. For men, a handkerchief was not just a practical item, it was also a statement of care and decorum. Often carried in a breast pocket, a pristine handkerchief displayed a man's respectability, while the second one was reserved for actual use. Women's handkerchiefs, smaller and often embroidered, served similar purposes, though with a touch of personal flair. In working-class homes, these items were carefully washed, boiled, and repaired, a weekly ritual that spoke to both economic necessity and a desire to maintain a certain standard of cleanliness. The arrival of disposable tissues in the 1960s slowly put an end to the handkerchief culture, but for many older Britons, paper tissues still feel wasteful. If we think of British Christmas traditions, we can't forget the peculiar practice of hiding coins in Christmas puddings. The idea of finding a silver coin, such as a 3-penny bit or 6pence, was believed to bring good luck for the coming year. While the practice had its roots in medieval times, it became particularly popular during the Victorian era, symbolizing a mix of prosperity and the thrill of a good fortune. Despite the obvious dangers, chipped teeth and occasional trips to the doctor, this tradition persisted well into the 1970s and 80s. With safety regulations tightening, the tradition eventually faded, but for decades, families risked dental mishaps for the promise of festive luck. The kitchen was another area where resourcefulness and practicality reigned supreme. One such example is the mangle, a hand-cranked machine that helped squeeze water from clothes after washing. It was a labor-intensive process, often resulting in injuries, but the mangle was a vital part of British households until well into the 1980s. Many families continued to use them because they could wring clothes more effectively than modern spin cycles, making drying faster. Though back-breaking, there was something oddly satisfying about the mechanical action of the mangle, and for many, it became a beloved, albeit exhausting, ritual. Another kitchen tradition, albeit a more uncomfortable one, was the use of plastic covers on furniture. Throughout the 1960s to 1980s, it was common to find sofas and armchairs completely encased in plastic, creating a sticky, squeaky sitting experience. This practice wasn't about neurosis, it was driven by necessity. Furniture was expensive, and the plastic covers were a way of protecting these costly investments from the wear and tear of daily life. The covers allowed people to admire their furniture without actually using it, preserving it for the occasional special occasion. The practice was most prevalent in working-class homes, where the desire to maintain respectability often collided with economic realities. In the realm of household chores, the Saturday morning ritual of cleaning the doorstep was a clear example of competitive domesticity. Women would kneel on their doorsteps with buckets of water, donkey stones, and a great deal of social pressure to keep their stone steps immaculate. The cleanliness of a doorstep was considered a reflection of a household's moral character, and those who failed to maintain spotless steps were often the subject of gossip. Though this custom began to fade as women increasingly entered the workforce during the 1960s and 70s, it persisted in some northern communities until the 1980s, reinforcing traditional gender roles in the process. Speaking of domestic uniforms, the apron, or penny, was a working-class woman's daily attire. It wasn't just for the kitchen, it was worn throughout the day to protect clothes from the grime of housework. These aprons were substantial wraparound garments that shielded a woman's clothing from dirt and wear. They weren't removed for visitors, and a clean apron was a sign of respectability. The apron, like many other aspects of domestic life, was practical and rooted in the economic realities of the time. Of course, no discussion of domestic life in mid-20th century Britain would be complete without mentioning net curtains. These sheer curtains, which hung in front of windows, allowed households to watch the street without outsiders peering inside. Net curtain twitching became a kind of community surveillance, where everyone was in the know about each other's comings and goings. It was a form of gossip disguised as concern for privacy, and the sheer necessity of keeping the curtains clean made them an integral part of household life. While the arrival of CCTV cameras has replaced much of this kind of surveillance, the image of the nosy neighbor peeking through net curtains remains an iconic part of British culture. In kitchens across the country, margarine tubs became an essential part of British domestic life. Starting in the 1960s, margarine tubs, often from brands like Stork or Blue Band, were reused time and time again as storage containers. This habit grew from the frugality of wartime rationing, where the ethos of make do and mend was ingrained in every household. Even families who could afford proper storage containers continued using margarine tubs, driven by a deep-seated reluctance to waste anything. The tubs were used to store everything from food leftovers to buttons, screws, and seeds. This resourcefulness became an indelible part of British culture, and many families still have collections of these plastic containers to this day. As we reflect on these quirky and resourceful practices, it's clear that they were more than just eccentric habits. They were responses to the constraints of a time when frugality and social pressures shaped everyday life. Though many of these customs have faded into memory, they offer a fascinating glimpse into a bygone era of British domestic life where every object had a purpose and nothing was ever wasted. Today, these practices may seem absurd, but they were once vital to maintaining respectability and survival in a challenging economic climate. If you've enjoyed this stroll down memory lane, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more nostalgic content. We'd love to hear your thoughts. What quirky habits do you remember from the past? Share your memories with us in the comments below.